My deepest apologies, my fellow Itadori investors. I'm afraid I have bad news. What's up, guys? I'm here, and here to do a breakdown / discussion on whether or not Yuji's domain, the assertion of one, his domain expansion, the pinnacle of Jujutsu, the absolute apex of a sorcerer's ability, the peak of the peak of the peak, has actually done anything for Yuji. Like, anything at all. In terms of his, general overall scaling, inverse, and I'd say arguably cross-verse, but cross-verse gets really weird and complicated. Because Yuji's abilities are really weird and complicated. So that's another video for another time, but very specifically I do want to talk about inverse, especially considering now that the Shinjuku Showdown is finally over, I feel like I can really talk about Yuji's domain as a whole, what we saw of it, what it means, what it doesn't mean, and whether it really helps Yuji out a whole lot, or if it doesn't help Yuji out a whole lot, or if it even hurts Yuji in some way, shape, or form. But with that being the case, let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Heading me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? The guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do mean to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, Yuji Itadori's domain expansion is important. It is the reason he defeated Sukuna. I will not sit here and say otherwise. If Yuji Itadori did not open his domain expansion when he did, he would have lost. No matter what. If Sukuna was not under the pressure of Yuji Itadori's domain, at all times, at any moment, then Yuji was going to lose. Even with Nobara's later interference, I really don't see Sukuna losing to a Yuji without his domain expansion. So it is narratively important. There is a reason why it happened. It popped off. It confused Sukuna. It did its job in the terms of defeating Sukuna. And of course, in terms of a narrative sense, that's what we're all here for, right? The narrative... No. You know exactly what we're here for. We're here for that scaling. That juicy cross-verse, inverse battle stuff. But like I said, I'll be covering cross-verse right now because there's hot debate on what Yuji's domain actually does, and that's a big issue we're going to get into in a second. But specifically inverse, the domain expansion is kind of something that every single high tier to top tier kind of needs to have to be relevant, with rare exception. Because there are exceptions, but with rare exception. Do you know how many times I personally, you personally, and many others have likely heard of the term DD? And I'm not talking about Dragon Dance, I'm talking about domain diff. Where ultimately, a character could hypothetically beat another character. But since the character they're fighting has a domain and they don't, boom. It's one of the biggest reasons Kashimo is still so hotly debated. If Kashimo had a domain expansion, I feel like no one, I think he'd pretty solidly be top. I mean, no, his performance against Sukuna, it depends on how much a domain would extend his performance against Sukuna. Ultimately, Kashimo's in a really weird spot. But if he had a domain, a lot less people could say domain diff. And if you can't say domain diff, then it gets a lot more difficult. And of course, there are characters who get domain diffed, but don't actually get domain diffed. I'm looking at Awakened Teen Gojo, for example, just because his stats are that crazy and he has a really good technique and all in purple. It's clearly there are characters who can dodge the domain diff. Maki and Toji, 2 characters who very easily dodge the domain diff, simply for the fact that they're immune to most domains. I'll talk about whether or not they are not immune to Kenny's and or get affected by Kenny's in another video, because that's a debate in of itself. It's one of the biggest parts of that battle. But still, talking logistically, domain diffing is a thing. And thusly, Yuji Itadori was a big victim, a hefty victim, a gargantuan victim, I'd say, of the domain diff argument. Before he got his domain, essentially every Yuji versus battle conversation would end there with any of the high tiers, and heaven forbid you put him against the top tiers. Oh, you want to put him up against Ryu? Domain diff. Sure, he has simple domain, it'll break. They all do. This even gets reinforced later on, I think either here or someplace earlier. Simple domains do not last against full-size domains. They simply cannot. Oh, you want to put him against Earl? Domain diff. That's pretty darn difficult to overcome. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of stupid. That's kind of not too good for you, boy. Oh, you want to put him up against Yuta? Domain diff. Sorry. Yuta has a complete domain expansion. And it's really, really good. Kind of gets the main diff. Akane Kinji, Yuji still beats. Yes, I'm a Hikari. I'm not going to say a Hikari hater. That's the thing. I still like Hikari. I just feel bad for Broski. I just really feel bad for Broski. And notably, his domain isn't lethal. But essentially, domain diffing was a constant, consistent argument you got for Yuji. Now, where I personally scale Final Yuji overall in terms of stats is also another video for another time. But very specifically, I do want to mention that Yuji already had real good stats, real good scaling. Then he awakened, got even stronger, got another curse technique on top of his initial curse technique in blood manipulation, which drastically boosted his RCT. Like, he was a character who was already super, duper strong, and ultimately hitting all these black flashes that he did. I know that's Sukuna. Hitting all these black flashes that he did, evolving as he did, awakening the second curse technique as he did, and slowly but surely sharpening the blade, if you will, by using it over and over and over again. He was already getting up there, but he was a domain diff victim. So, of course, the introduction of the domain kind of, I'm not going to say kicked open a door, but really did kind of kick open a door for Yuji Itadori. Where before, you could just yell, domain diff! Now, it becomes a question of, whoa, you can't domain diff another domain user, because they also have a domain to diff you. So essentially, every domain battle, or a battle between two domain users, becomes a clash of domains. Now, of course, domain clashing has only been shown twice. Thrice? I'm not talking about like specific number of times, but I'm trying to think of like in battles. It happened in Gojo versus Sukuna, it happened in Megami versus Dagon, and it happened in... Technically, Gojo versus Jogo is a domain clash, but Jogo's was so incomplete and inferior to Gojo's that it immediately lost the battle. So like, we've seen a close or equal refinement in the Gojo versus Sukuna case. We've seen a consistent struggle and tug of war in both sides, where one side has the edge in the Dagon versus Megami case, and we've seen an absolute massacre in terms of domain diffing in a domain clash in the case of the Jogo versus Sukuna. Not Jogo versus Sukuna, that would have happened, but Gojo versus Jogo fight. So all that's laid bare. So all of those possibilities exist. And Yuji Itadori's domain may fall under the domain diff in spite of having a domain category. And here's why. Number one, vagueness. Here's my biggest issue with characters like Yuji, characters like Hanami, characters like Uro, characters like Ryu, characters who we know have domains, but we have no way to quantify what their sure hit would be. I can sit here and headcanon all day about what Jogo's sure hit would be. Well, if you look at the Maximum Uzumaki and see that that's basically the sure hit of Kenjaku's domain, which is Geto's domain, based on how you interpret it, and based on the fact that anti-gravity is the anti-gravity engine would be the reversal in order to get gravity, and we haven't seen a curse technique reversal domain expansion. That means Maximum Uzumaki is the sure hit for Geto's domain expansion, which is Kenjaku's domain expansion they use against Yuki, and the effects are similar if you look at them, and thusly, bada bing, bada boom, you have maximums being the conditions for domain hits, right? Yeah, it'd be nice if we didn't have multiple other examples of domain hits having nothing to do with the base technique or being basic applications of the technique. Domains are completely different. So Leslie, could I sit here and say that Ryu's domain sure hit is just a really big granite blast? I could. Could be wrong though. Could I just say that Uro's domain expansion is just endless thin icebreakers all over your body? Yeah, sure. Sounds nice. I don't know. We could have seen Uro's domain expansion used as a sure hit through Yuta, but ultimately we didn't get to see that. And Yuji's in the same boat, but arguably an even worse one, because he's kind of like Dagon. Kind of like Yuta. But even then, I'd say Yuta's much better. Yuta's in a much better spot. I'd mostly compare to Dagon, where he has a domain sure hit effect. It's not shown in 265, it's not shown in 266, but it is shown in 267. Now this boy, he got it on him, and he keep it on him at all times. He got that domain sure hit built in. Thing is though, it's the soul dismantle. It's the soul dismantle. And the question is, and the question that I don't have the answer to, is how effective is it on like the verse? Because notably, I would presume this is the same soul dismantle he used on Sukuna that very specifically targets the boundaries between souls of two people in an incarnated vessel. Right? So like, if that's the case, then what does that do to Yuta? What does that do to Maki? Obviously nothing. Yuji's domain will never hit Maki anyway. What does that do even to Akari, for example? Heck, even Sukuna, who in 264 drops this beast of a line right here. Let me see if I can hunt that bad boy down real quick. The impetus to the domain expansion. When the target of this mantle's curse technique is the boundary between mine and Megumi Fujiguro's souls, it's deadly to a fully fleshed curse like me. But what does it matter if it doesn't hit? And that leads to the domain expansion. Obviously, that's Johnny Boy. Sukuna's not a curse, he's a sorcerer. We've been through this. But with it being the case, the principle is the same. A very similar statement is made in the TCBs. A very similar statement is made in the original text. Ultimately, these soul dismantles were doing numbers to Sukuna when Yuji was landing them initially. So you think a one that's boosted by a domain hit A domain sure hit effect would do crazy numbers, but it really doesn't. It really doesn't. Sure, it makes Sukuna spit out these apparently not fingers, because supposedly these don't exist anymore. So suddenly Sukuna only has one finger left. I don't get it. Gay, why'd you draw this if there's only supposed to be one finger? But still, it doesn't do much. To the fact where Sukuna's like, wait a minute, I can just keep boxing you. Well, he's not holding hard wicker basket or nothing. And worse, it doesn't seem like he's being consistently assailed by the sure hit, which means the sure hit for Yuji may just be bang. You get one shot. Which is bad because almost every other domain doesn't operate that way. Dagon, an endless stream of Shikigami. Yuta Kotsu had to turn off Jacob's Ladder. It didn't just randomly stop hitting Sukuna, he had to hold it back. For Gojo, Unlimited Void is a consistent stream of information consistently flooding your brain. Malevolent Shrine is endless slashes. The only other one-shot, one-hit domain that we've really seen is technically Kenny's? Which is, in my opinion, is Ghetto's. I think that is the domain of Curse Spirit Manipulation. But still, that may be a twofold thing. One, because of Curse Spirit Manipulation. And two, because he already thought he one-shot Yuki and didn't want to waste any more Cursed Energy. Or Cursed Spirits. Because remember, Uzumaki has, it has a cost. And we don't know how many Cursed Spirits Kenny had at the time, considering he already released millions of them back in Shibuya. But still, with that being the case, it's looking real rough for Broski. Where Yuji has one shot, and then we see...
The boy think he could strip me away with a half-complete domain. Yes, I'm able to heal his wounds because of reverse curse technique.
That's so stupid. John, why do you translate like this? Do you read the manga? Oh, sorry. The John Fury kind of broke. Once again, let me quick little tangent, but we'll get right back into it. Let me be humble. I don't read a lick of Japanese. You could put hiragana and katakana in front of me. I could not tell you anything. I think I may recognize the kanji for fire. That's it. And even then, I probably wouldn't. That's it. I have no clue, nothing. So, if you were to ask me, hey, Pencil Man, if you complain so much, why don't you translate JJK? I can't. Draw JJK? Can't. Write JJK? Can't. But still, if I had the ability set, I would at least read the manga I'm translating, so I don't make statements like that. But ultimately, once again, we're going to go through a rough idea of what John meant to say and go on the TCBs and the original translations that were done by the fans. He hasn't been able to heal his wounds with reverse curse technique, so he's way past his limits too. And the massive cursed energy consumption to the domain means you're the one who'll die. So, of course, this is a heavily fatigued Yuji. Don't get me wrong. So maybe a base, full health, fully healed Yuji would have more cursed energy to spare after casting his domain. But still, this is also Yuji who had how many black flashes? 13 of them? I think the 13th may be the one he lands on Sukuna towards the end of this chapter. But he landed a lot. His cursed energy output was restored. His cursed energy reserves were being refilled. He did a lot. He put in a lot of work. So the fact that he burnt through so much cursed energy and can't even heal himself after doing all that, that's kind of bonkers. Kind of a little bit crazy. So Yuji's domain takes a lot of cursed energy out of him, meaning if we take this at face value, even when he's tweaking off numerous black flashes, he may not be able to heal himself with RCT when you're battling inside his domain, for one. For two, he seems like a one-shot wonder, where ultimately, if he doesn't one-shot you with that first domain hit, the domain is basically useless other than as a place to fight in, because the sure hit effect is not continuous. Three, the domain is actually really big. Huge. Now, you may be wondering, Pencil Man, what does that matter that the domain is huge? Isn't that low-key a flex? Yuji Itadori on his first try made a domain expansion that big. It's half a flex. Half of the reason why I think this domain is so large is because he's accidentally, once again, following the muscle memory of Sukuna, who makes super big domains. Remember, the last domain that Yuji made in his body, or Sukuna made in Yuji's body, was the one all the way back in Shibuya, which was 150 meters, or 140. It's some specific amount that it wasn't the max range because of Megami. That was the domain that was last used in Yuji's body, so when Yuji went to do domain, I at least headcanon that Yuji reflexively opened his domain that big, very specifically because he was so used to Sukuna opening big domains in him. That sounds so wrong, but you know what I mean. But since his domain is big, it's real easy to shatter from the outside, and this is one statement that I do genuinely forget. I heard it. This is a statement I've heard, so take this with a grain of salt. Anyone in the comments, if you can confirm the statement exists or confirm the statement doesn't exist, remind me. But I think it said the bigger your domain is, the less refined it is. The less control you have over it. Which makes sense. This is Yuji's first domain expansion ever that he made himself. But still, if size does actually scale somewhat to refinement and control and understanding of your own domain, then Yuji has some of the worst we've seen in the series. Why was Gojo's domain getting super big? Because he was manipulating it and hoping to capture Malevolent Trident inside it. It didn't work, but he went big to shrink down, which was a feat that was considered impossible to make a basketball domain. But Yuji, he just went big. And that's it. So, his domain is pretty unrefined. And unfortunately, we just don't get more. After 268 ends, Yuji kind of just calms down. The plot skips. So we have no idea if he's refined or trained. So we just got to go with this domain idea. So, if we lay out all the car facts here, Yuji barely knows how to use domain. Has a non-continuous sure hit. A sure hit that is not effective against majority of the verse unless he can change his properties. Who knows? We don't know. We don't see him change his properties again while getting Suguna. And also, it takes a whole bunch of cursed energy. It's super duper unrefined and is large on the outside, meaning its outer shell is likely super duper fragile, meaning it could be shattered with one tap if you happen to be fighting a character that has multiple means of attack beyond their range or could transcend the real world, stuff like that. So, are you starting to see the issue here? What does the domain actually do? And not in the sense that what does it actually do? It fires soul dismantles, and we know what soul dismantles do. But because we know what soul dismantles do, they're not effective against half the characters that were already above Yuji. And then the other half of characters that were above Yuji, domain diff them. Because his domain is trash. The first time his sure hit gets canceled out by the sure hit of his opponent, he immediately gets hit by the rest of the sure hits. They don't even have to fight him. They can just stand there. Yuta still domain diffs Yuji. He shows up in 267, I believe. Yeah, Yuta, he still domain diffs Yuji. Horrifically. Because we know Yuta's sure hit effect is continuous, or at least he can keep it running. And his domain is more refined, because he's had it for longer. And he just has better control over it, because it's smaller. So, he just has a better domain. So when Yuji goes to domain Yuta domains right back. And then Yuji dies. Or loses, eventually. Ryu and Earl. Two ancient sorcerers from extremely battle-heavy and battle-hardened periods with domains of their own. Whose is more refined? Probably Ryu and Earl. If I had to hazard a guess. Even Dagon, this sounds so great, but even Dagon has a smaller domain. And at least has a continuous sure hit effect. Does Yuji have that? I don't know. Obviously, I still think Yuji diffs Dagon. Entirely separately from the fact that that is domain. Once again, just bring up examples. I don't think that Yuji's position has shifted too much with his domain, because nothing has really changed. It's a nice domain counter until he gets hit by the continuous sure hits. It's a nice domain counter until Yuji can't even heal after you beat him down hard enough to shatter his domain. He has no curse techniques for a moment, and he's completely out of CE. It's a nice domain counter until Yuji uses one sure hit on you, is out of gas, and you just beat the taste out of his mouth. And then it's a nice domain counter, except, oh wait, Maki and Toji don't have domains in the first place, and are immune to domains, especially Yuji's. They're just all the same. So like, the characters who I typically see argued above Yuji, stay above Yuji. Yuta stays above Yuji. Nothing changes. I've heard contentions of Maki and Toji, and that's fine. Once again, I'll make a video talking about final Yuji or Shinjuku, end of Shinjuku Yuji versus Maki and Toji and how I feel about that. You can likely hazard a guess by how I've been talking about them relative to Yuji in this video. But still, once again, I asked this. If you can prove that Yuji swings faster than a full chant dismantle / possible world slash and moves faster than Mach 3 Naoya, or strikes faster than Mach 3 Naoya, please do. Please do. And come back to me when you can. But that's another one. Doesn't really change much. I always thought Yuji kind of beat the brakes off Hikari because I just don't really see Hikari doing the damage to Yuji. That could be a fight that goes on forever. So if you really want to slop Hikari off, and heaven forbid you use the Yuta and Gojo statements. If you use those statements, then Hikari beats the taste out of Yuji. Because he's just infinitely domain looping him and basically wearing him down forever. You would have to argue like they just fight forever because Yuji keeps landing black flashes on Hikari because Hikari does no damage to Yuji because of Yuji's bulk. Like, that's it. That's the only way you could really argue that. So that's still contentious in spite of Yuji's domain. Who else? Kenny domain diff. Personally, I'm in the camp that Kenny's domain can attack other domains like Sukuna. I'm hesitant on it attacking Maki and Toji because it doesn't have the specification of this mantle like Sukuna's domain does. But still, once again, this is a video for another time. But Kenny, domain diffs Yuji. Uh-oh. Kashimo, he'll take one hit from a soul dismantle. If a Sukuna who had taken how many hits Like, let's be real. How many hits of soul damage and soul barrier connection, perception, overwhelming, all that stuff? How many hits did Sukuna take before getting hit by a soul dismantle that does basically nothing? Not many. And what happens when Hollow Wicker Basket Kashimo just Hollow Wicker Basket's the first domain hit, and it's like, oh, that's it? And then just beats the brakes off of Yuji by electrocuting him to death. Like, I don't know. Obviously, Sukuna and Gojo still dookie all over Yuji. But still, that's the thing. A lot of the characters you would really see in contention don't really lose. And like, heaven forbid you use the original incarnation of some characters. If you use the original incarnation of some characters, Soul Dismantle literally becomes useless. You go with the original Yorozu, Yuji's genuinely worthless, domain or not. And she has a domain of her own. You go original Ryu, genuinely beats the brakes off of Yuji. Horrifically. And then domain diffs him. You take original Earl, horrific. You take original Angel, we have no idea what they're like. So they're a completely up in the air thing. But Yuji still can't air hop, y'all. He better punch the ground and hope the tractor beam up there and hope that Angel don't have both of their arms and full output because he's still a victim. And I don't even think the domain will work on them because they can just leave barriers. So ultimately, I'm in the camp that Yuji don't really do nothing. He hasn't really gained anything. He hasn't really done anything. Nothing legendary has come from Yuji's domain. His scaling hasn't changed anything. Nothing, because the domain's kind of garbage. I hate to say it. It's the peak of Jujutsu. It's the reason. I keep saying peak of Jujutsu so fast that now I'm starting to hear myself say Pikachu Jutsu, which it's hilarious, but it does bother me a little bit because I want to say peak of Jujutsu. It's the peak of Jujutsu, the apex of sorcery, wonderful, beautiful, crazy, next level, top of the line, clicky heel stuff, and it's responsible for the defeat of Sukuna undeniably and unbelievably, but it ain't all that. It doesn't change Yuji's status in Verse all too much. Until we get some sort of confirmation that the sure hit's continuous, he can do it a lot easier, he doesn't lose too much curse energy, all that, which will probably never happen. Yuji's domain doesn't change anything. Wherever you've scaled Yuji before domain expansion, he scales like literally the exact same place. So that's pretty darn unfortunate. But of course, those are my thoughts. Please leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you guys think I'm absolutely crazy for undermining or downplaying the domain of Yuji Itadori, our main character, the key to defeating Ryoma and Sukuna? Or do you guys agree with me and think that the domain's kind of trash? It doesn't really do much other than set him up for even quicker failure because he burns a lot more of his curse energy faster. I don't know, but let me know in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below. You can support me for as low as $1 a month. No, things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks will include the live reaction to the very last chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variation of all my videos, and become a $25 patron or a $25 member. You can order whatever video you want. Also, I have a link to my Ko-Fi description down below. You can drop 5 beans for a short video, 20 beans for a long video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you guys. I'll admit, some people are getting real good at waiting. Notably, I let the full outro play out for the most part, but I sometimes like to throw in the passwords afterwards just to make sure y'all still listening. But some of y'all gotten good with it. Some of y'all do really be listening to the end. I really appreciate that. Y'all know how much that makes me happy, bro. I love that people love the Yap, bro, or at least care about it enough to listen to the end. But enough of me talking about the Yap. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave fake world in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: Sierra, Greyhound, Eternal Flame, NMA, Real Rare, Red Wolf 4765, Paris Arnold, Astro, Brandon Payne, and G Prosper. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, Igneal Lind, and A+A. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $7 members: Autumn Mornings Lazo, Fine, Zombie Hunter, and Austin Wimberly. Then I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members: Robbie Uchiha, Jay Warrior, and AZ Void. Then I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons: Overlord Zero, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okami.
And I'd like to give the craziest, juiciest, most next-level, quadruple, sloppy, toppy, next-level superhuman in beyond this world kidney having thank you to our $100 patron, or That Guy with a Pencil tier patron, Calvin Elder.